Lost in the Green Hell, Yossi Ghinsberg's 3-week Amazon nightmare. Imagine standing in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. All around you, towering green walls of trees stretch endlessly in every direction. The air is thick, sticky, and feels like it's pressing down on you. You hear 1,000 noises, buzzing, insects unseen, animals moving in the shadows, the distant rush of water. But you can't see much of anything, and the jungle is alive, but it's also hostile. Out here, the smallest mistake can get you killed. Now imagine you're completely alone in this place. No food, no supplies, no map, just you and this endless green hell. And that's exactly what happened to a young man named Yossi Ghinsberg, whose story of survival in the Amazon has become one of the most unbelievable tales ever told. For 3 weeks in 1981, Yossi fought hunger, injury, wild animals, and his own mind as he tried to escape the jungle. His journey started with a dream, but it turned into a nightmare he barely survived. A dreamer with a wild plan. In 1981, Yossi Ghinsberg was 22 years old. He had just finished his mandatory service in the Israeli military, and like a lot of young people, he was restless. He didn't want to just go to college or take a normal job. He wanted adventure, real adventure. So he packed a backpack and headed to South America. His travels eventually brought him to La Paz, Bolivia, a city high up in the Andes Mountains. La Paz was a gateway to the Amazon basin, the vast rainforest stretching out into the unknown. And for Yossi, that unknown was exactly what he wanted. He dreamed of seeing untouched places, meeting indigenous tribes, and living the kind of adventure most people only read about in books. And then, almost like fate, he met a man who seemed to offer exactly that. Enter Karl Ruprechter. One day in La Paz, Yossi ran into a man named Karl Ruprechter, an Austrian who claimed to be a geologist. Karl told Yossi he knew of a hidden gold mine deep inside the jungle. He spoke about tribes untouched by modern society, rivers that cut through virgin forest, and secrets waiting to be discovered. To Yossi, this sounded like destiny, and Karl offered to guide him there. But Karl wasn't the only one drawn in. Soon, 2 other travelers joined the group. Marcus Stamm, a Swiss teacher Yossi had become friends with. Kevin Gale, an American photographer eager for new adventures. So now it was 4 men. Yossi, Marcus, Kevin, and Karl, their self-proclaimed guide. Together, they would set out into one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. What they didn't know was that this trip would tear them apart. Into the jungle. The 4 men took a small plane to the edge of the Amazon and began their trek. At first, the jungle seemed beautiful. The trees were enormous. Brightly colored birds flashed overhead. The river glittered in the sunlight. It felt like they were stepping into a hidden world. But beauty quickly gave way to brutality. The air was so humid it felt like breathing soup. Mosquitoes swarmed constantly, biting through clothes. Food was hard to find, and Karl's promises of easy travel began to crumble. Marcus, the Swiss teacher, started to fall behind. His feet became badly infected from constant wetness, swelling with sores. Every step was torture for him, and the group's progress slowed. Meanwhile, Karl, the man who claimed to know the way, started to look less like an expert and more like a fraud. His directions were vague, his shortcuts made no sense, and the others began to suspect he was making it all up. The tension in the group grew worse each day. A desperate plan. Eventually, Karl suggested a solution: build a raft. If they floated down the Tweetchie River, he said, they'd reach the gold mine, or at least civilization, much faster. It sounded risky, but with Marcus getting weaker, the others agreed. For days, they hacked down trees and tied logs together with vines. The raft was crude, but it floated. They pushed it into the river and climbed aboard. At first, drifting downstream felt like a relief. The jungle was still dangerous, but at least they didn't have to slog through it on foot. But then came the rapids. The river turned violent, smashing the raft into rocks and tossing it like a toy. One set of rapids hit especially hard, and the raft shattered. All four men were thrown into the churning water. In the chaos, Yossi and Kevin managed to grab part of the wreckage and cling on, but Carl and Marcus were swept away, vanishing into the jungle forever. When Yossi finally crawled onto shore, battered and exhausted, he realized something terrifying. Kevin had been carried downstream, and now he was completely alone. Alone in the green hell. The Amazon is not a place where humans are meant to survive on their own. Yossi had no food, no tools, and no idea which way to go. He was surrounded by jaguars, snakes, poisonous insects, and parasites. Even the plants could kill you if you ate the wrong one, and at first, he tried to stay alive by eating whatever he could find. A few berries, bird eggs, even worms and larvae he dug out of rotting wood. He drank from the river even though he knew it could make him sick. The jungle itself became his enemy. Days were blisteringly hot and humid, while nights were freezing and wet. Rain poured constantly, soaking him through. His skin split and became infected. Mosquitoes ate him alive. And then there was the isolation, no voices, no human contact, just the endless drone of insects and the shadows of unseen predators. Yossi started to hear things. He thought he heard people calling his name. He saw visions of rescue parties. He even hallucinated a beautiful woman who guided him through the forest, only for her to vanish when he reached out to her. His mind was beginning to crack. Breaking point. At one point, Yossi's foot became so badly infected that he could hardly walk. Each step was agony, but he forced himself forward, crawling when he had to. He told himself that if he stopped moving, he would die. Then came the flood. One night, heavy rains caused the river to rise suddenly. Yossi, sleeping on a small patch of dry land, woke to find himself swept away by raging water. He barely managed to grab onto a log and cling for his life until the flood subsided. Another time, completely drained, he collapsed in the mud and accepted death. He closed his eyes, ready to let go, but then he thought of his family, his parents, his siblings. He couldn't leave them wondering what had happened to him. That thought gave him the strength to crawl forward inch by inch. For 19 days, Yossi battled hunger, infection, predators, and his own mind. By the end, he was a walking skeleton, barely alive, and then a miracle. The rescue. One morning, Yossi heard something he thought had to be another hallucination, the low rumble of an engine. But then it grew louder. It was real. A motorboat was passing on the river. Using the last of his strength, he stumbled to the riverbank and waved his arms. His voice was gone, but he screamed anyway, a hoarse whisper of desperation. At first, the boat didn't stop. Then it turned around. On board was none other than Kevin Gale, the photographer who had been separated from him during the raft accident. Against all odds, Kevin had survived and made it to a village. He had convinced a local tracker named Tico Tudela to help him search for Yossi. And unbelievably, they found him just hours before he likely would have died. Aftermath: Yossi was rushed to a hospital in La Paz. Doctors were stunned he had survived. He was malnourished, infected with parasites, and covered in sores, but alive. Carl and Marcus were never seen again. Their fates remain a mystery, swallowed by the jungle. As for Yossi, he eventually wrote a book about his ordeal, Lost in the Jungle, which was later turned into a movie starring Daniel Radcliffe. He also became an advocate for sustainable tourism in the Amazon, determined to give back to the land that nearly killed him. Legacy. The story of Yossi Ghinsberg is more than just survival. It's about the sheer willpower of a human being when faced with impossible odds. Alone in one of the deadliest environments on Earth, with no food, no tools, and no map, he held on for 19 days and lived to tell the tale. And the crazy thing, if Kevin hadn't gone back for him, we probably never would have heard it. So what do you think? Could you have survived 19 days alone in the Amazon? Or would the jungle have swallowed you whole? As always, visit us at readtherealstory.com for all the true crime stories and behind-the-scenes insights you won't find anywhere else.